The fly I'm going to tie for you today is the Knuckle Dragger. It's a fly that has longer front legs, which flutter in the current a little better, aids in a good swimming action. Use a non-slip loop knot with this fly, and you can jig it along and impart a lot of really active live motion. I have a 4mm metallic brown slotted bead mounted on a fulling mill jig force number 8 hook. Tying with 50 denier gel spun thread here, which is pretty much my standard tying thread I tie everything with. So I'm just going to work my thread down to the tie-in point that I want to mount the tail in. To mount the tail, I'll take a barred rubber leg, fold it in half. So I match the ends up here, like that. And I'll pinch to my finger until I have just a very small loop. And place the top of that loop on the top of the hook like that. And you can then do the pinch wrap technique. And very loosely, you can see and adjust your position. I'm not using hard thread wraps here. I'm advancing the thread forward, and as I advance it forward, I increase tension until I know I am not going to distort the positioning of the rubber legs. And you can see I didn't even trim anything there. This is why I like this gel spun thread. If I have to use extra thread wraps, I can do so without building up too much bulk. And when I need to have a skinny fly, I can do so easily. So I kind of created a little X-wraps between the legs. And I like the legs to cock up at an angle that you can see here, as well as when you look down upon it, has a very nice V section, V shape. And that will give lots of action while the fly is in the current. Now let's mount the ribbing material, which is this golden tan colored body glass. And I like to cut a really long wedge shaped point at the end. So just cut a nice, takes a few times sometimes. There we go. And we'll mount that on right back here where I can capture the material carefully. I'm starting to use some tight thread wraps here. Just far enough that I can not, just wrap far enough back that you don't distort your rubber legs. And if you look carefully, you can see my tag end right there. I'm going to tie that down using this gel spun thread. There we go. So everything's ready to go for our dubbing. Here I have the snowshoe rabbit foot dubbing in golden stone color. And I'm just going to start applying the dubbing to the thread. Take our thread back, just firm enough thread wraps to keep everything nice and taut and in place, but not enough to distort your leg position. We want to start real thin. This first wrap will start thin. And the beautiful thing about tying in rotary is you can move the vise around as needed to see where you're at. Now we'll work with our ribbing. You can see I'm pulling a lot of tension and stretching firmly here. That was tied in really well. I'm gonna start with a tight, skinny turn here. And as I advance forward, I'm decreasing tension in my hand, allowing the material to regain its original dimensions. Usually about 6 or 7 turns. We'll stop right there. I'm going to tie this off on the bottom of the fly. It doesn't matter where you tie it off. We are tying in the round. What I want you to be able to see is how I tie this off. With one wrap over, keeping firm tension all the time. Under, over, under, over. I do that a few times, and then to make sure I really have it tied down, I'll just do a few more tight wraps. I'm confident that's not going anywhere. I'm going to cut that away. Now we'll take the time to scruff up the body here. Now, golden stones don't really have gills along their abdomen. They have them usually between their tails and in their armpits, basically. That's a way to call it, but nevertheless, a good fuzzy body never hurt anybody. So we're going to tie a dubbing loop now. I'm going to take a little bit of this on my finger and create a dubbing loop, maybe 3 inches. And I usually go a couple times around the base, and then we'll get that thread forward and out of the way. I made a composite dubbing loop already, which I'm going to have an additional video for. Just slide it on. Make sure your thread is secured over all the material. And then I'm going to spin the dubbing loop. So if I can get this so you guys can see it better. Going over. There we go. When you have your dubbing loop or the thread twisted tight enough, you can go in with a wire brush and start teasing out the fibers, getting everything, either the stray strands removed and all of the hackle fibers out at an angle, and you get this very beautiful buggy brush that we can then advance forward in as a, basically this is a hackle. This is a composite hackle, fur and feather hackle. Wrapping forward and touching turns. And here's the portion of the dubbing loop where I omitted the hackle, the Brahma hen out of. You can tie a few, just get that really tied down tightly. And cut away. I'll take a little bit more dubbing and not dub it as tight. This is a little bit looser. And I'll just build up a little pad right there in front of in front of the collar. This gives me a place to tie the legs in at. I'll measure in a leg the length of the abdomen and use my left thumb to hold that in place. I just use my thumbnail to push against that little padding I just made and do 3 medium wraps to hold that leg in place. Then I'll measure out the front leg to the middle of the tail back here. And that'll be the length the front leg will be. You can see how that's kind of in between this one and that one. Right about there. Boom. Now, my legs aren't going to foul around my hook when I fish this, but I have some nice long active legs. I'll just mount in this rear leg, or the far side, or the other leg, the same way I did the front one. You can increase tension if you want slightly. You see how that just kind of cocked my legs back out? You take a little bit of the dark peacock brown flash tinsel. This is Sabai's Fine and Flash. Let's take a small amount of that. Dub that onto the thread. Just enough to get a couple turns around here to conceal our tie-in point. A couple around the back. And then I'll go in front of the arms and behind the arms into the armpits there. Measure my front legs to match. Do some grooming as needed. And then you can whip finish off. Thank you for watching.